Why isn't it all right for black women to be angry? Why is it necessary for them to pretend that it doesn't hurt? And that's what they do all day, every day, in order to get along with people like you.
Let's talk with Andrew Love.
Go on.
Yes.
Well, welcome. On today's show, we will be talking about evangelical racism and the politics of morality or the lack thereof in America today, and maybe touch on a little bit of critical race theory. As we get into this topic, let me first start by saying that I understand that not all melanemic evangelicals adopt the kind of conservative politics that reinforce those historical origins of racism. There are some that disagree with racism and avoid right-wing politics. We're so excited, though, that today we are here with internationally known diversity educator, anti-racism teacher, and lecturer, Ms. Jane Elliott. Welcome to Real Talk with Andrew Love.
And I'm Andrew. Yes, thank you for the introduction. Yes.
Not Andrew, what?
And here we go.
Andrew Love.
Okay, yes. He's on his love walk. So he's walking in that love, right, Andrew?
Working on it. I shall do some self-love sometime.
Well, since we're talking about that walk, I'm going to get into the first question. In my religious upbringing and in my spiritual walk, I have always been taught that Christianity is fundamentally rooted in love. Evangelicalism is a branch of Christianity, yet they believe and accept biblically sanctioned racism. Why do you think that melanemic American evangelicals vilify the different ethnicities and people of color, if that's, the case?
Because they have been taught to from the first day. When they first go into a country, the reason for the conquest is to take over a country in the name of whatever they believe in. And mostly what we melanemic people believe in is money. The color that's important to us in this country is green, which is the color of our money. And we will give to the church that which will not cost us too much, but will get our acceptance from the people in the church. If you think racism began with Christianity during the Spanish Inquisition. A man named Torquemada was going to turn everybody in the country into Catholics, and he was killing those people that he didn't think were Christians. He had killed over 2,000 people before somebody pointed out to him that many of the people he had killed were indeed Christians. So then he realized you can't tell what a person's religion is by looking at them. So he had to find a way to decide who deserved to live and who should die. And he set it on skin color. The lighter brown people, and they were all shades of brown. And the lighter brown shaded people in that time he called white, because white is the color of goodness and purity. He called the darker skinned people black, because black is the color of savagery and evil. So he set us into polar opposites, white and black, and neither of them is the color of human beings. Human beings do not come in black and white and red and yellow. They come in shades of brown. But if you can set people at each other's throats by saying, I'm white, so I'm pure, and you're black, so you're savage and evil, that's exactly what he did. And that's exactly what we're still doing today. You go to the dictionary and you look up black, and it says savagery and evil. And then a little farther on, if you look it up another time, there it says people from Africa with highly melanated people. But none of them are black. They're highly melanated, but they aren't highly, and it says almost black. It says they are almost black, but they aren't black, because human beings don't come in that color, and we don't come in white. I am not white. This is not white. This is speckled, but it isn't white. And you are not black. I can see the color of your hair, and I can see the color of your skin, and your palm look about the same color as mine. So this whole thing was people, psychologists today say it's a social construct because that's 4 syllables and they feel better if they give it a longer name. It's not a social construct, it's a damn lie. And we ought to stop telling it, and we ought to stop believing it, and we ought to stop acting as if it is true. It is not true. We are not black and white. Human beings come in shades of brown. That's it. Let's give this nonsense up.
So I have heard and even believe that and I've heard you say this too, that part of the reason, or the majority of the reason, is for fear of retribution.
Well, right now, when you've got a wannabe president who says at his campaign meeting, campaign rally, "I am your retribution." In other words, he's going to get even with all those people who don't look like him. And he's going to help those people who look like him get even. He's talking about retribution. The rest of us aren't. People, I want to let this, I don't know whether you know this, but when I did the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise with my 3rd graders in 1968, the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, the blue-eyed people were on the bottom, the brown-eyed people were on the top. I heard that was on Friday. I heard my blue-eyed boys in the boys' room saying what they're going to do to those brownies when they got on top. And they knew that we were going to turn it around on Monday. On Monday, I was afraid to go back to school because I thought, this is going to be hell to pay rent to. This is going to be ugly. These kids are going to get even. Put the collars on the brown-eyed people, took them off the blues, put them on the browns. And I waited for those kids to get even. They didn't get even. And on Tuesday, before we discussed it, they wrote paragraphs telling anyway. And then we got in the magic circle, and I said, "Now, you blueies said you were going to get even when you got on top. You didn't get even. Why didn't you get even?" And those kids, almost in a chorus, said, "Because we found out how it feels to be on the bottom, and we didn't want to make anybody feel as bad as we did on the day we were on the bottom." Now, think about that. Every melanaceous or melanotic person that I talk to says, "I don't want to get even. I want to get equity. All I want is what I am promised in the Constitution. I want to get equity. I want my children to be treated fairly in school. I want the teacher to look at my child and say, 'Here's another beautiful brown boy,' instead of, 'Oh, another little black boy.' Damn it, if you're going to use the language, the terminology of the 1500s, then every male that you know who believes in this nonsense, this racist nonsense, should go around wearing knee breeches and powdered wigs. And all the women who believe in this crap should go around wearing dresses that their waist is cinched so tight that it's no more than 18 inches around, because that's what they did in the 1500s. If you're going to talk like the 1500s, then walk like the 1500s, dress like they did, eat like they did, be transported the way they are, and communicate like they did. We don't want to do that, but we are perfectly happy to take on the attitude, the racist nonsense of the 1500s. It's time to get over it. I'm too old for this nonsense. And so are you. This should have ended a long time ago.
Agreed. I was thinking back to our interview a few years ago. I'm sorry, Andrew. A few years ago, when you said to us, you talked about your classroom being a cooperative competition of groups,
right?
Different leaders. And you described society as a mosaic, an art form that is made up of many different elements that are absolutely beautiful. And listening to you, listening to all your interviews and listening even to you talk today, you said, "I believe that we could set up a society in which people are a part of the mosaic." And it sounds breathtaking, but living it right now, do you believe that it is even humanly possible?
Absolutely. There is no doubt in my mind. There is not a doubt in my mind that we could turn this thing around in 2 years. We really could if we decided to. Barack Obama we were on our way with Barack Obama. We fell off the reason we needed a Barack Obama is because we had what's the name of the actor that was a president for a while? Miserable, tall. Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan.
I didn't know who was the actor.
And he was a nothing, but he was handsome. He had been in the movies. People looked up to him. And the day before he became a Republican, he was running as a Democrat, but the Kennedys were running against him, and he knew he couldn't beat the Kennedys. So if he wanted to get elected, he had to go to the Republican Party. And that's how he became a Republican. He had been a Democrat up to that point. But when it was obvious that he couldn't beat the Kennedys, he became a Republican. Now, this whole thing at this point, we're going backward instead of forward. Yeah. Because for the last 25 or 30, maybe 40 years, history hasn't been talking about the truth of the past. Because right now we are having people say, we're going to ban these books and we're going to change the history so that our white students don't feel guilty. When you talk about the past and the way we have behaved in the past, we don't talk about it to call guilt, because these kids aren't responsible for what happened in the past. They are responsible for what happens in the present in order to construct the future. And the only way to construct the future is to learn about the mistakes of the past. Somebody has said, those who forget the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat them. That's exactly what is happening right now, because we haven't told the truth about history. We're going to pretend that the ugly things we did in history, we didn't really do those. And right now somebody is out there saying slavery was good for these people because it taught them skill. Yes, the governor of Florida said,
yes, I heard that. I heard that.
Of course you heard that, because everybody heard it, because it's one of those best things you've ever heard in your life, and because a whole lot of people wanted to believe it. That was good of us to bring those slaves here, because they were in bad shape in Africa, and we brought them here and taught them how to work and how to behave and how to develop a skill. That was good for them. This is the kind of barn dirt that they are telling today, and people are going along with it because then they don't have to think anymore. You see, I go out, I just left my daughter, sent her back home. She spent and she's 60 some years old, spends most of her time looking at her telephone. I finally, I was reading a book and she's still talking on her thing, and I'm thinking, oh my God, where did I go wrong? They come to my house to play cards and they bring their cell phone to the table. And I said, here's the way it is. Don't bring a cell phone to this table, because we're here to play cards. I'm not here to watch the rest of you talk on your cell phones. And they looked at me like, well, you're a real mean old bat, aren't you? Yes, I am. Because I'm watching people who don't want to pick up a book. If they can't read it on Kindle, they can't read it.
Imagine the classroom today. I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, but I'm teaching right now in 8th grade in the state of Virginia. And that's exactly how it is. It's a battle. It's exhausting to have to keep redirecting and collect cell phones, which I hear we're not supposed to do. But it's everything is a distraction away from what we should be focusing on and teaching and bridging these gaps. Only we're not allowed to.
Well, see, if I were teaching, when I did my student teaching, have I told you about this before?
I heard a little bit about, no, I don't think you're student teaching. No, I haven't heard this one.
Under Hazel Grant in Independence, Iowa, there was right then, it was the time of the communist scare. And there was a man one of his kids was in Hazel Grant's 3rd grade classroom. And this guy was just sure that those teachers were teaching the kids in that school to be communists. So he went to the school board and demanded that the school board allow him to go through all the books in the classrooms, K through 8, and take out those that were communists. So Mrs. Grant was the principal, and the school board, the administrator said, the superintendent said, you'll have to let him in because he's going to make trouble. So let him in and go through the libraries. So she invited him and his cohorts in, and I was standing there watching this. And they went through all the books and they read through the book. They'd put one on the shelf, on the back on the top on the shelf. They'd put another back where it belonged, put it back on the shelf. And finally they said, there, that's all. Those books shouldn't be in children's hands. Those books have communism in them. We're done now. She said, fine. She showed them to the door. She said, thank you for your help. She closed the door behind them. She turned and said to us, now get back to work. Put those books back on the shelves and get back to work. We put the books back on the shelves and got back to work. Now, if I were teaching today and some fools came in and said, we're banning these books, I'd say, wait a minute. You touch that book and I'll call the police, because these books belong to the school district and they were purchased with taxpayer money. You have no business taking them off these shelves. Now, until you come in here with a search warrant, don't come in here and try to take books off these shelves. I'll get you fired for theft. I would do that. And if I were teaching today, I would lose my job, either that or they would stop trying to push me into doing something that is in fact against the law.
Yes. Yes.
You-
It's a whole,
you-
it's a different.
This is ridiculous. What is happening? This book banning is ridiculous. And it is being done by, and there's another thing. Anybody who came into my class to give a speech or to do something, I had to say, I want to know what your credentials are.
Mm.
If you know more than these kids' parents do about something, then let's see that you know it. Let's see your license. Let's see that you're sure that this is going to bring something that's valuable to these kids. Those people who are going in and telling people how to teach have never been to education courses. Many of them have never been to college. All they do is sit home and watch Fox News. And they believe what's coming out of Fox News. So they come into classrooms and try to run classrooms with that little experience. That should not happen.
And so they talk about, so this is what they're talking about when they say critical race theory.
Oh, let's deal with that. Number one, Jesus help me. CRT stands for critical race theory. Critical race theory is a topic that you study in law school at the college level. Nobody is teaching critical race theory K through 12 in schools in the United States of America. But the people who are complaining about it are trained to distract the public so that you won't look at what they're really doing. If they can talk about critical race theory, they won't have to talk about the fact that they are destroying AEA, area education agencies in Iowa. They are telling teachers what they can teach, whether or not the people who are making these recommendations have ever had any teacher training education. No, you can't. See, if you're gonna, when somebody says CRT to me, I say, well, why would you complain about CRT? To me, CRT stands for Curriculum Respecting Truth. What's the problem with you with CRT? Well, that's not what it means. Well, that's what it means to me. That's the only CRT that we teach grades K through 12. We don't teach critical race theory. We teach curriculum respecting truth. They cannot understand that. They look at me like I'm the one that's crazy. And I think, yeah, I am. But I've been crazy a lot longer than you have. And I've seen this. Oh, I've seen it all. It's time to put a stop to it. The next time somebody says something CRT to you, you need to say curriculum respecting truth. Why is that a problem
Love
for
that.
you?
I love that.
Yeah, and they can get the book. Oh Lord, I just read it this week. Number one, they need to get the book White Evangelical Racism. Have you read it? And how about that? Did you learn anything by reading that book?
Yes, you told us to get this.
And have you read it?
Yes. Yes.
My
And listen to the audio in the audio book too.
Everybody should listen to it or read it and then take pieces of it and put it up on classroom walls. The woman knows exactly what she's talking about. And then after you read that one, you have to read Power. Just a minute now. The Power Worshippers. The Power Worshippers. Have you ever heard of it? The Power Worshippers.
No.
Get the book Power Worshippers, because it will blow you away when you realize where all this nonsense came from. It's just a minute. I've got to get it's over here on the. Oh my God! Anybody who doesn't read this doesn't know what they're talking about.
I've seen that. I have seen that cover. I've seen that book before.
Nice. You told me about this more, but I ain't never
Read it.
read it.
Read it. There are some books that you can say their name and people will shudder. Oh, addressing inequality won't by itself resolve the challenges of the Christian nationalist movement, but it will take some air out of its bellows. See, this thing is just full. Many leaders of the Christian right like to dress up in red, white, and blue and announce themselves as true patriots, but they are the same people who seek to pervert our institutions, betray our international alliances, and make friends with despots, degrade the public discourse, treat the Constitution as a subcategory of their holy text, demean whole segments of the population, foist their authoritarian creed upon other people's children, and celebrate the elevation of a king to the presidency he has made a sport violating democratic laws and norms. Does that say all you need to know about?
That's what it says about Evangelicals. That's how you pronounce it. That's how they operate. That's a summary of how they operate. I was going to ask you a question about, those one question I'll ask you. For Trump had those people supporting him, which is very known now. They say about 50% or more supporting Trump. How will this affect the election? How much power and pull do this church have in presidential election, especially Republican?
Only 40% of the Republican Party is Trumpeters. 40% of the Republican Party. The rest of us need to get together and actively go out and insist that people go to vote, because if you don't do it, if you don't get off your polyunsaturated fatty acids and get out there and insist that people vote, we're going to lose our democracy. Because this man has said we aren't going to have a democracy. First he was talking autocracy, but that's too much money. We're talking about money then. So then he got with the crazy Christians, and these people are crazy. These white evangelical Christians are not Christians. They do not believe in what Christ told us. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. How many white people do you think are afraid because they're afraid that those black people, which don't exist, but those other people are going to treat us the way we've treated them? Because that's what the golden rule says. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Are white people doing unto people of color as white people want done unto them? You know they aren't. In fact, I have said to groups, well, every white person in this room at the college level who wants, when they were still allowing me to speak on college campuses, said to, and there's a clip of that on Google. You can Google it. And there I am saying to a group of college students and professors, well, every white person in this room would like to spend the rest of their life being treated the way we treat our black citizens. Please stand. Total silence. Not you could hear a feather fall. Nobody stands up. I say, you didn't understand what I said. Well, every white person in this room who wants to be treated the way we treat our citizens of color, please stand. Nobody stands. And I say, you just admitted that you know what's happening. You know what's wrong. You don't want it to happen to you. And that is the major fear of white, stale, pale males in this country today, that when blacks get power, they're going to treat us the way we have treated them.
So they want to stay on top. They want to have the dominant cultural power.
They want to have the money. With money goes power. They want to have the power. And if they could get the Christians, so-called Christians, who do not believe in spending your life working for money. Some of this ridiculous stuff started in 1953. Yeah, think about it. In 1953, Dwight Eisenhower was the president of the United States. And a group of members of a Catholic men's service group, Knights of Columbus, maybe, went to their congresspersons and insisted that we put the words, "In God we trust," on our money. So, yeah, in 1953.
I didn't know that.
And it's still there today. It's still there today, but it isn't on the big bills. It's only on the small bills, which is just supreme, I think. I just think that's the funniest thing I ever saw. Anyway, when I was 15, I was going down to meet my dad at the restaurant. He was going to take me home. And I walked into the restaurant, and there on the wall is a sign that says, "In God we trust. All others pay cash." And I started to laugh, and my dad said, "What are you laughing at?" I said, "Look at that sign." And he said, "Well, I'll be damned. That's right, by God, that's right." And he laughed all the way to the car. So I think everybody who gets a piece of paper money, United States currency, on which it says, "In God we trust," everybody should take out a ballpoint pen, and under the words, "In God we trust," everybody should write, "All others pay cash."
Wow.
The words "In God we trust" do not belong on our money. We have supposed to have separation of church and state in this country. It's time for us to practice what we have been preaching. It was the same year, 1953, Dwight Eisenhower allowed them, signed the statement that said they would put the words "under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag. The words "under God" do not belong in the pledge. And after several years of my teaching and having the kids say it, I said, wait a minute, kids. If you don't want to say "under God" in the pledge, you don't have to. because that brings religion into the school. We don't have the right to do that. So you don't have to say it if you don't want to. So someone, shamefacedly, but then when you read it, you say under God, and right after it comes the word indivisible.
Invisible.
Now think about that.
Indivisible.
It divided us into those who believe in the proper God, or those who don't believe at all. And heaven help us if there are any of those in that classroom. The words under God do not belong in the pledge. And another thing that doesn't belong in public, private, parochial school classroom is the Mercator map.
Hmm.
You know anything about the Mercator map? The Pope commissioned Mercator to make a map that showed the spread of Christianity. So if you look at the Mercator map, the equator on the Mercator map is 2/3 of the way down the map. It doesn't divide the map into two equal portions. There are no northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. It's northern triosphere and southern triosphere, because the 2/3 of the map has the countries in which the Pope had finally managed to turn everybody into Christians.
Hmm.
Every time you use the Mercator map, you're teaching Christianity. There's a picture on that map. Get a picture of that map in your mind. See Greenland hanging down in the middle of that map? Great big ripe plum hanging down in the middle of that map. People, you need to realize that Greenland is a little tiny thing up at the top of that map, if the map is right. You've got to get the Peters projection map. Go to the map and see the difference between the Christian map and the Peters projection map. And don't tell me we haven't been teaching religion in the schools on a daily basis. If this is allowed to go on much longer, the 3 R's will be reading, writing, and religion. That is not what we ought to be teaching in the schools. Reading, writing, and arithmetic, and that's the 3 R's is so dumb to talk about anyway. But it's even stupider if we're going to start teaching reading, writing, and religion. We must not allow that to happen in the public schools in this country. However, the public schools are going to be, the students that are going to public schools, that's going to be a smaller and smaller group as more and more small schools, private schools are started, because the government, and here's something else you learn in the Power Worshipers. Oh my God, read this book, because you find out that taxpayer money is being used to support these private schools. They are actually, they're actually being paid to take their kids out of public school education so that they can be conditioned to what this country is supposed to be in the future, which is back to the 1800s for women and for men and their place in the society. And they seem to think, these evangelicals and these conservative, whatever, Republicans, but you have to remember that Donald Trump knocked the L out of the word Republican. It's now Republican because of his interest in the pubic area.
Yeah.
You have to remember this. Yeah, this whole thing is just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And we no longer have the United States Supreme Court. We now have the United States Sperm Court, because all those guys are interested in, the last 3 that he appointed, is sperm cells and what color children they're going to produce.
Well, it doesn't sound like much has been, I mean, I know we've come away, but it doesn't, it feels like you said, it feels like we're going backwards. So what is the status quo in America today? Because around the 1970s, Black preacher and evangelist Tom Skinner claimed that evangelicalism supported the status quo, which is slavery, separatism, and
it did. He's absolutely right.
And it does.
It did, and it still is, and that's what's really scary. It still is. It's just
that part. Because I wouldn't have come so far, but at the same time.
But you see, you can. If Benjamin Franklin said, "Well, it's your," I think it was Benjamin Franklin. Well, it's your democracy if you can keep it, and we kept it for a lot of years. But now we are losing it because the schools are not teaching history.
Bye.